All right, welcome guys to our November collective webinar here. We have a really cool topic here. It's all about having multiple class offerings at your gym, at your karate studio, at your business, how to implement that if you're not there already. And also if you are already offering a wide variety of classes, when it might make sense to kind of pare that down or at least audit what it is you're offering and if that's bringing value or just creating an extra headache. So we have a lot to cover here. Before I kick it off to Jay and MDB, I do want to remind you guys, MDB mentioned this briefly, but there's two boxes here at the bottom. There's the chat box. So if you have any feedback or anything resonates with you, or you want to have a conversation with some of the other people that are in the webinar, the chat box is perfect for that. However, if you have a specific question that you want us to answer in the Q&A section at the end of the webinar, there's a specific Q&A box here in the bottom. So just click into that, throw your question down. You can do it at any point and we'll get to all the questions at the end. But without further ado, guys, my name's Gabe. We have Jason, we have MDV here from the NCFIT team. We want to kick this off. Jason, I'm going to kick this off to you first. So I think that what would be useful to kind of really get us started is, what are our 4 locations now in the Bay Area, our NCFIT locations, currently doing in terms of how many programs are we offering in the different locations? And then we'll kind of take a step back and get to how we got there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So we currently run 2 programs at NCFIT, NC Metcon and NCX. And I'd say from a scheduling perspective, it's a little bit different depending on each location, slightly different, but I'd say it's about 60% Metcon, 40% X if I had to say based on the schedule. MDV might correct me. We might be closer to 50-50, but I think what's unique about that is that it is location dependent. So in Redwood City, that's maybe a little bit more legacy, has been around longer. We might lean more towards NC Metcon, but maybe in a newer location for us, we might lean more towards NCX. And I'd love to talk about the differences between those 2 programs. We have those 2 programs. We also have available for our members a variety of supplemental programs, additional programs that are all awesome. That could be done at home. That could be done during open gym, which is NC Compete, NC Flex, and then when they're traveling, NC Go. But our primary programs we provide in the gym, coached offerings, is NC Metcon and NCX.
So MDV, I think this is, a good background for you to give us in the context of this conversation. NCX and NC Metcon are similar to an extent, but there are some very, very real differences that make them different. How did we get to the point now that we're offering these 2 programs, and what options do they offer our members that are different while still offering a common theme that allows us to say, hey, these are both NCFIT classes and they stand for what we do at NCFIT?
Yeah, thank you. NC Metcon and NCX are both strength and conditioning programs, and that's really our bread and butter as a fitness organization. We hang our hat on the fact that we are going to lift weights and we're going to put our athletes through conditioning style workouts. We're going to do both of those things. We're going to do them a little bit different depending on what your taste is for the type of fitness experience that you want to have. But at the end of the day, we specialize in delivering both of these styles of fitness experiences at a very high level in a very similar way when it comes to an excellent experience, highly professional coaching, and a fun and engaging environment. We really focus on those things as being core elements of what we do, regardless of which program the athlete is stepping into. So when an athlete comes into one of our gyms, one of our locations, or they look at our website, they're able to see that we offer these 2 different types of paths, which ultimately can get you to similar style goals, but just depending on which path you want to follow. NC Metcon is our GPP style program, General Physical Preparedness. It's a little bit part of our legacy coming from a CrossFit style background and evolved into a unique NCFIT signature on that style of training. You're going to see a little bit more variety, a little bit more complexity, some of the sexier stuff, some of the movements that we don't necessarily see in NCX right now, like some handstand stuff, like some snatching here and there, barbell movements that might have a wider variety of loading or volume associated with them. Overall, you just have a bit more variety in that type of class. And it can change every day. You can have a very short workout one day and an extremely long workout the next day. The other program that we currently offer, NCX, is like an 80-mile-per-hour fastball down the middle every single day. It's pretty regimented in terms of what the format of the class is going to be like. You get a strength component, you get a conditioning component after that every single day. And we focus a bit more on movements that really deliver a lot of bang for the buck for the athletes. So regardless of whether or not you're a beginner, an intermediate athlete, or an advanced athlete, if you want to focus on squatting, pressing, deadlifting, and getting explosive with with movements like power cleans and hang power cleans, and even the hang power snatch every now and again, kind of the basic fundamentals of Olympic lifting, NCX is a fantastic program for you. You're going to get a little bit more of a cycle-based, regimented experience versus that highly complex, highly varied environment in NC Metcon. Not better or worse, just different paths, but it's very easy for us to talk about the distinction between the two and talk about the united front, that these are both amazing ways to develop your strength and conditioning.
When a new member comes into an NCFIT location MDV, do we point them in a direction based off them being beginners? And you kind of alluded to it, but is either program serve the purpose of being something that's an easier class for beginners, or are they, like you said, just different journeys to kind of get to the same end result?
I think fundamentally NCX is probably a little bit easier to fold beginners into because the movement variety, the loading, the complexity isn't as high as NC Metcon. But that being said, if you get an athlete who walks through your doors who maybe doesn't have the type of fitness experience that somebody who has done GPP or functional training before, and they say, hey, listen, I really want to learn how to climb a rope. I want to be able to do things like pull-ups in higher volume, or I want to be able to learn how to snatch a barbell. There's nothing wrong with having that person enter into the NC Metcon track and just being aware that the journey might be a little bit more extended, that they're going to have to walk before they crawl, and they're going to have, crawl before they walk, and then walk before they run. So it can be appropriate for beginners. It just has to be adjusted in order to meet them where they're at that day. And again, one of the things that I think we do really well as a fitness organization in either one of these programs is we're meeting the athlete where they're at every single day. It's not just a cookie cutter approach that everybody gets the same workout every single time that they walk through the door. The workouts are adjusted to meet the individual needs.
Awesome. So the purpose of NCX isn't like, it's our beginner class and then you can move up to the advanced class. It lends itself a little bit better, but that's definitely not the intention with having these two offerings.
Yes.
So, Jay, we didn't get here overnight. We didn't say, hey, this is going to be the best setup, 2 classes, nice, simple strength and conditioning. That, took quite a couple of lessons learned in the process to get there. What I think would be super interesting is, what are some of the things that we've tried that have been important lessons to get us to the point now, which is simple, under the strength and conditioning umbrella, 2 offerings that we feel really good about and can talk about?
I think a good soundbite for everyone to take away with is we want to run a business and not a hobby. And when we talk about our business, we're talking about it, we treat it like a business and not a hobby, whereas we try and professionalize it in all areas and recognize that if something happened to me, we still want this business to live on. That's my goal, right? Well, taking that same approach as a soundbite and bringing it to your classes, I also think is important. That we want to treat each one of our new classes as a business and not a hobby. And I think that's a great framework that I wish we had learned earlier. What we would do back in the days, we'd listen to some of our members instead of the sum of. We would then hear from a group that say, hey, we want to do spinning. Okay, let's add a spin class. Or we'd hear from a group, they want to do Pilates. Great. Or maybe they hear from a class, they want to do a compete program or Olympic lifting program or an endurance program. You name the class, we've added it. But what I've began to realize over time is that we need to stand for something as a training organization. And if we become everything, then we're nothing. And so by us having all these different classes, if someone really wants yoga, they're going to go to a yoga studio. If someone really wants spin, they're going to go to a spin class. They're not going to go to our gym. But instead what happened is we got diluted and our messaging dropped off because we tried to offer everything to everybody. But the biggest takeaway is that you would have one coach. And this also goes for a kids program, which I learned the hard way. You'd have a coach who's really passionate about teaching kids, which is awesome. Or have a coach that's really passionate about Olympic weightlifting. So you would create this class specific using that coach as the catalyst. The problem is that if that coach is on vacation or that coach leaves, all of a sudden it's a great reflection on how your business is not actually a business, it's just a hobby, because that program eventually goes away because you lose the leader there. So if I could do it over again, what I would recommend is as you add programs, make sure they align with your core vision of who you are as a training organization. In addition, make sure that as you add these, you have a variety of players involved that are bought in so that you could last a long time with that program and not just have it as a one-off because someone's passionate about it. I have a lot more to talk about on this, but that's a cornerstone.
You know, MDV, I know you have, you know, some really tangible advice on specialty classes because they can definitely serve a purpose. You know, what are kind of some of the prerequisites you would look for to offer a specialty class? Like, when does it actually serve a little value in the business versus, you know, when might it be something to kind of revisit?
Yeah, I think Jason hinted at this, and he made a really strong point that it's got to be almost in the fabric of what you want to be as a fitness and training organization. Like, if there's nothing wrong with adding a specialty class if it's part of your long-term vision, if it's part of what you want to represent in the fitness space, if you want to be a strength and conditioning organization that has Olympic lifting as well, and you really want to back that, you want to put the systems and process and resources and time and energy into building and cultivating that, then I think that can be really successful. I think what Jason also hit the nail on is a lot of times these specialty classes come up because you get a coach or you get an athlete or you get somebody who walks in and goes, hey, I want to do this for your members, or I want to do this for our people. And it sounds really attractive because you go, oh, well, I don't have to do anything. I won't have to monitor this. This person's going to run it. They're going to take care of it soup to nuts. But also, as Jason said, when that person inevitably gets sick or takes vacation or isn't around or they miss their class or they go off and do something else outside of your organization, now you're left holding the bag there. So you have to be prepared at the outset of these to have tough conversations and to really examine whether or not, hey, this sounds like a really fun idea that we can implement and, you know, I'll not have to do a lot of work in it, or do I want this to be a long-term part of what we do and why we do it? And if you're not ready to really invest in it, not ready to have that kind of extended journey or create multiple owners or create system and process, there's nothing wrong with running short-term specialty clinics. I think that's a very underutilized lever that gym owners can pull a little bit more. It's also an additional revenue stream that you can add into your business, whether or not you want to charge for it, or it can be an additional value add for your members if you want to do them for free. It also allows your coaches to express their passion, but instead of having this super long commitment that they have to sign up for months, weeks, years, potentially, now we're just looking at maybe a couple of times per year we're running these things, and you can kind of pick and choose the players that you put out there.
I think that's a really, really good foundation to kind of see where this stuff makes sense. You know, Jay, I know we have a lot of specific examples in the history of NCFIT of things that we've tried, and for, you know, some of the reasons that MDV just brought up just haven't worked out. What are maybe the two situations that stand out at you as like, man, that was a good lesson learned with this specific class that we tried?
I mean, I'll use CrossFit Kids as a great example, right? I went and got my certification, and we had someone who's really passionate about it. And so we added a kids class. And at the time, I don't even know if I had kids. This is a long time ago. And it went really well. And you had 10 kids maybe in the class or whatever it was who were really getting value. But the challenge became, it ended up worse than I ever thought, because now you let down those families, you let down those kids, because you didn't create the systems and processes in the beginning that could have alleviated all these issues. Instead, we started it. We got people bought in on a vision, a shared vision. We're going to try and help your kids get more fit. They're going to have a bunch of fun. Then all of a sudden, the coach that was there ended up leaving. And now our product was subpar. It was a poor reflection on our brand, and we weren't servicing the members as well as we could have. And so I would have rather have not done it at all than done it the way that we ended up. And that goes for that class and a slew of others. I'll use a really good example that most people listening probably are aware of. Chris Hinshaw came on to the, at the time, NorCal CrossFit team, and he was instrumental in my endurance. And he created a culture of endurance and aerobic capacity at NCFIT that was unfound anywhere else. We would have 100 people show up at the track for his workouts in the rain. It was wild, the level of culture that he was able to create. And I was super proud of it. The challenge was when Chris ended up moving to Tennessee, that program dissolved. And so if I could do that over again, I think we would have still done it, But I wish that we would have talked to Chris and set it up more as a business and less as a hobby, so that we could have had systems in place to have multiple coaches, so it lived on long past when Chris would move on to Tennessee. So those are two tangible examples of how that could have been done differently.
I just have one last thing to add here. I know this is going to feel kind of icky when I say this, because I think everybody, it kind of feels really good to have kids or teen classes or have specialty classes or whatever like that. And you're going to get some members that come up to you, like Jason's saying, and say, hey, we should have this. We're going to have this. It's going to be great for what you do. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're the owner. You have to dictate whether or not that it's part of what you do or not what you do. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, hey, we don't service children or teens in our gym. We're not about that. We're about an adult fitness population. And I know that might sound a little like, oh, we're saying, hey, we don't do this for the kids. And there's plenty of other gyms out there that do it. And if you're not interested in it, if it doesn't really ignite your passion, if you don't have the systems, the process behind it, it's probably better to not do it right now, hold off on it, and then maybe down the road when you do have some of those things in place to then introduce it.
It's a really good point, because then it just ends up being a poor experience for everyone. You're not providing the value that that program merits anyway. Jason, real quick, go ahead.
I want to touch base on staff buy-in, if this is appropriate time.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I know that we've been talking about sustainability for a program. And also, I think as an owner, it's important not to place your personal bias, which I have done in the past, and I admit to that, on the business. You know, we have tried martial arts classes. We've tried different things that I'm interested in, but it's not at our core foundation as a business. And one of the things that we have learned the hard way is staff buy-in. And in particular, I think people that are watching this, I don't know if we're really having a conversation today about a compete track, Olympic lifting track, or things of that nature. I think what some gyms are thinking about is adding in potentially a lower complexity class like we have called NCX, which it's not better or worse than Metcon. It simply is designed for someone who either doesn't desire, maybe doesn't come in as often, or it's just perfectly designed as a strength and conditioning program, but it doesn't have Olympic lifting the same way or rope climbing or whatnot. And so sometimes when you go to your staff and you want to incorporate, quote unquote, a lower complexity class, not lower, less effective, just lower complexity, you may get some staff pushback. And what I would encourage every owner to do, and every coach to be open-minded about, is to clearly communicate the why behind why you want to incorporate this. And I think that if we had done that a long time ago, 10 years ago, we rolled out what was called a QuickFit class. It's a long time ago. So we had CrossFit and we had QuickFit. And it was a 30-minute class. And the why behind it that I share with the staff was it was a sweat class. People just want to come in, they want to get sweaty, they want to get back on their day. That wasn't good enough for our team, because at the time and still today, we want to be more than just about sweating. We want to be about excellence and service and results. So if I had pitched it differently to our staff, if I communicated our value proposition differently, I think they would have had a different perspective of what a 30-minute class can provide. Here we are years later, and we now have a lower complexity that's very well received by our staff. But I should have explained the why behind it further, because the staff ultimately have to be bought in for your members to be bought in. And when you're talking about a program that doesn't have snatches and rope climbs, people want to know, why do you want to add that? And you got to talk that through with your staff.
Yeah, buy-in, communication, super, super important. Jay, I want to talk a little bit more about QuickFit, because I know we have some collective members that are on this webinar now that maybe have been with us long enough that they do remember NCFIT, NC30, which were kind of the later versions of QuickFit, being a part of what we offered. And it was, for a long time, a class that we offered at NCFIT. What ultimately led us to getting rid of the 30-minute NC30 class? And what were the specific lessons learned there?
So originally we started off, it was CrossFit and QuickFit. Then we eventually changed the name to NC60 and NC30. And then what ultimately happened was we said, hey, NC60 is our most complex version of fitness we provide at NCFIT. NC30 is the least complex. No, we needed something in the middle. So we called it NC45, and it was on a 45-minute timeline. And the debate was, with more duration, you could add more complexity. But offering 3 different classes became a little bit confusing and became difficult to manage from a scheduling perspective. And we were dispersed from a coaching perspective, and it wasn't the right vision for what we wanted. So ultimately, we removed NC30 and we renamed NC45 to NCX and put it on an hour-long timeline. So that all of our classes are on the same timeline and consistent in that manner. And the decision-making process was difficult on that. It wasn't just like a cut and dry decision. You had some people who said, I really want this. You had other people who said, we really want that. And the decision was made in 2 primary ways. Members survey to a vast audience. And what we found makes surveys more successful is if you add in some type of carrot. We like to do, hey, if you do this survey, we'll send out a free pair of shoes, or we'll randomly select someone. I would recommend that for anybody serving their member. Just come up with some random gift. Hey, if you fill out the survey, we'll give you a free shirt, or we'll randomly select a few people. The second thing was looking deep at ourselves as a training organization and saying, what do we stand for? What do we believe is going to get people in the best shape of their life and is going to be something we can stand for a long time? Those were the 2 main things that helped us alleviate from NC30 and brand in NCX and NC Metcon. I don't know, MDV, if you, was that about right?
Yeah, those are 2 really strong points. I think, and part of that second point also was to make sure that our audience understood that just because NCX or NC45 was on a shorter timeline didn't make it less of a fitness experience. That was something that we battled against a little bit. People go, oh, it's only 45 minutes versus this is 60 minutes. And we wanted to make sure that people understood that these 2 programs are on equal footing in terms of what you can get out of them. Yes, there was time savings in terms of, hey, I'm only committing to 45 minutes as opposed to 60 minutes here. And that was some of the stuff that we had to articulate to our members, that we wanted to give you the full fitness experience. We wanted to make sure that you're warming up properly, getting your weights and loading up to where you could for the strength portion, transitioning properly into the workout portion. And the timelines were doable, but they were tight. They were a little bit thinner. Now we have all the time around the NCX class that you would typically have around the NC Metcon, and they're on equal footing side by side. One thing, Gabe, that I wanted to chat about really quickly in terms of when Jason was talking about introducing the why to your coaches, that's absolutely essential. I think sitting down with them in an environment that's just the coaches and the owner and talking to them, articulating, this is why we're deciding to go this path, and then answering their questions about, hey, well, what does this mean for me? How do I coach this class differently? Are there any sort of different expectations or responsibilities? Having all that stuff laid out prior, that's really, really critical. One of the things that you'll notice if you do that process right, if you have all those expectations laid out, if you explain the why properly, you're going to be able to identify people in the organization who might not be wanting to go that direction, who are going to grind against you a little bit. They're kind of like sawdust in the grease. And you can have opportunities to try to win that person over, or have one-on-one conversations with them and explain, this is why we're doing this, is why this is important, and this is what this means for our future and your job with us. Now, you might reach a point where that person is just not on the team and the mission doesn't align to where they're at anymore. And it's going to be clear that the best decision is either to phase them out or eventually get them to understand that hey, you have to march to this beat of the drum, or you have to exit and find somewhere else. Because you can't have somebody who's an essential part of your organization, a coach, somebody who stands in front of your members every single day and they're grinding against what you want to do. That is cancerous. You have to nip that in the bud sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, really good point. And I think that exercise of figuring out what your gym is about, what your fitness organization is about, is that really important first step. So then you can, then the writing will be on the wall on who should have that tough conversation and who shouldn't. I did want to take a kind of midpoint intermission real quick and just remind everyone, we're up to 7 questions, which is amazing. We are going to get to all those at the end, but I see some questions coming in the chat box. I am going to look in there when we get to the Q&A, but just a reminder, if you want to put the questions in the Q&A box, that's where we'll be kind of getting started once we get to that point. With that said, the other thing that I wanted to talk about, I think we've done a really good job outlining, kind of what we're offering as a class, a coached class, how we got to that point, and, like you said, how to make those decisions. But, I think it's fair to say that a lot, if not all, the gyms that we work with have some sort of open gym times or offerings, right? There's some time, and, athletes are looking for this all the time. They have some time that they just want to come in and do something that's a little bit different. we offer NC Compete, which is our competitors program, now NC Flex, which is our functional strength and bodybuilding program, that are programs that we encourage people to do during open gym. And BB, I'm curious why maybe a competitor's program specifically is something that's better suited for that open gym type of model, why those specific programs aren't really meant for class, and just how to best offer those to members.
Well, like I kind of said before, they can be classes if they align with your core values and your core vision of what you want to be as a fitness organization. If you have a population of athletes that are very, very competitive and you want to offer a competitor's class and you're bought into it, you have multiple staff members who are, it might be successful. The way that we look at this is that we have extreme passion about going out there and coaching functional training, strength and conditioning at a very, very high level. But like you said, we also have members who might want to do a little bit extra, who want to scratch that competitive itch, who want to go out there to local competitions, or they want to get some additional conditioning or strength work underneath their belt outside of the class environment. That is fine. We want to offer those people a solution. We don't necessarily want them reaching always outside of what we do. And we do have clear owners for NC Compete and NC Flex. We do have people who are committed to the long-term visions of those programs. But with NC Compete in particular, the competitive aspect of CrossFit or functional training, it's pretty popular. I think that there's a bunch of people, in particular, if you're somebody who's, very competitive and you want to go out there and you want to do local competitions or you want to do the open, it's one of the things that's pretty high on the pecking order in terms of additional opportunities for training. We want those people still participating in the community. We still want them involved in our classes. So one of the core elements of our Compete program is NC Metcon. Every single day that there's a Compete workout program, which is 5 days a week, one of the main things that those people do is we want them to take class. I want those competitors in the class experiencing the workouts. Yes, they'll have some additional stuff that they'll have to do, but it's not like they're just always off in the corner doing their own thing, or they're bringing in somebody else's program to do their own thing while you're running classes. And you can figure out what your rules are in terms of that, whether or not it's, hey, you can do this during class or not during class, and how big your gym is and all that kind of stuff. But our rule on NC Compete, NC Metcon, is the workout that you do for the day. If there's additional things that you have to do around that, you can do it before class, after class, during open gym. You can do it at home. You can grab some buddies. You can do it outside, whatever. But you can't disrupt the class administration, because everybody is there for the same experience. What you're doing during class isn't more important what the person next to you is doing during class. And it's created a really nice environment for us. We have highly competitive athletes who go out there in the local scene and do local competitions, and they do the NC Compete program. We have a coach, Marvin Santos. He's been doing the NC Compete program and showcasing it on his Instagram channel and doing the workouts when he's not coaching. It's fantastic. He's a great representation of what that program can be. NC Flex for us is a new program that we offered. And the reason that we offered it is because I am super passionate about this style of training. This is something that I am doing right now in order to complement the other things in my life. I still do GPP style training to test workouts and those kinds of things, but I am the dedicated owner of this program. And it's also something that we looked at, that we wanted to have an option for people who didn't always want to experience intensity in some form. Yes, you can reduce the intensity of NC Metcon, NCX, NC Compete. You can drop it down. You can go through it for quality. All those things are available. But there's something about a program that just tells you from the outset, we just want you to have fun. We just want you to lift without any sort of expectations on how heavy it might get today, or what the time is on the clock, or what your score is. That's probably the biggest one. And it was an opportunity for us to diversify a little bit into an area, like I said, that we have a particular person who's interested, who's long-term invested in it, and it's going to be with us for a while.
Jay, you are obviously the one that's in the Bay Area, spending a lot of time in the gyms. What have you seen for athletes that are coming in during open gym time that are, utilizing these programs? Like, I'm sure you have, kind of your boots on the ground per se on what programs they're using and what kind of value that's bringing for people. So they're not just coming in and, doing something they saw on Instagram or following another program.
I mean, I think for us, the NCFIT Collective, we provide a lot of tools for gym owners. Now, if you're not a part of the collective, I don't know from an open gym perspective, how much time it is worth for you to create a new program just for open gym for your athletes. So I want to caveat that by saying, first off, I think everybody should be a part of the collective. I think what we're doing is the best in the business. But if you're not a part of the collective, I think you should focus on your core competency, which is your classes. Number one. And if someone wants to come in for open gym and you want to give a little extra credit, I think that's fine. But I would not, as an owner, be focused on open gym. I'd be focused on providing a premium experience in your class environment. Now, assuming that you have that locked in, then providing flex or compete or these other programs, I think is a phenomenal supplement. We see a lot of members, I see some, I should say, not a lot, some people stay after or come 30 minutes early and hit a portion of one of our other programs before they do the class. But you got to remember who you are as a training organization. We are not an open gym organization. We are a group class organization, and we have open gym as a supplement to that, which I think is excellent. And I think that for any owner, especially if you're not part of the collective, just be aware of how much time you're spending on designing programs for something that's outside of where you want to go as a company. I definitely want to make sure, Gabe, unless you want to touch base more on that, about scheduling different classes, because I do think that's a big touchy point for a lot of owners, including those that have 2-floor model versus 1 floor.
Yeah, and there's actually a couple questions around that. So I think it's a good time to tackle that.
So at NCFIT, we started off with a 1-floor model. When we refer to a 1-floor model, traditionally, that's anywhere from 2 to 4,000 square feet of a single floor. Eventually, over time, as our demand grew, now COVID threw a wrench in this system, but as the demand grew, we started offering an additional room. So we would have a 2-floor model. We'd have floor A, floor B, you can name whatever you want. And as the demand grew for one class in one area, we would then have concurrent classes or maybe have them on a half-hour difference in another room. Having them both in the same room is very difficult. You guys end up competing over noise. You compete over different things. So my recommendation is if you want to offer 2 classes at the same time, have directional speakers. We use Sonos. They work really well. Smaller speakers that are more directional, and have 2 different rooms. That's if you want to run concurrent. But if you don't want to run concurrent and you want to run different classes, my recommendation would be to look at the equipment flow. So for example, at NCFIT, we'll go off between NC Metcon and NCX, what we're referring to. But if you had NCX at 3 p.m., NC Metcon at 4 p.m., NCX again, and then NC Metcon, it's a lot of back and forth for your staff. So just be aware from an equipment perspective what that means. Typically, we'll look to try and make that as seamless as possible for our team, and we'll evaluate that schedule based on member surveys and what we just holistically think membership will like at those given times. And at MDV, I mean, we could talk more about kind of like the scheduling side of that, but I think that's an important note.
I think an important note on the scheduling side is, the goal is always to optimize the time on the floor of your business, right? Like one thing Jason says all the time is you're paying rent on the space 24/7. So the question always becomes, how can you optimize that floor space the majority of the time? And so what we do at NCFIT is we constantly, every single month, part of the numbers that we look at with, our financial team is what are the check-ins for every class and what class is starting to average. I think what we look at is below 4 check-ins per class. And that's usually what puts it, on our radar or the chopping block, whatever you want to call it. And that's when we'll take, a concerted effort to try and increase attendance. Like, what can we do? Can we get people to maybe bring friends and family? Can we get some excitement, get the coaches to talk about it? But if that number doesn't move, then we do revisit whether it's worth having a class there. Or I think that, and this is a really good point for people that might be thinking about offering a new offering, that might be a good time to try and pilot a strength and conditioning class if all you offer is GPP, right? Like, you don't want to take your noon or 5 a.m. class that you constantly have 10 to 15 people coming in and, stir the pot there or shake things up there. Like, that's working. That's doing a really good job for you. What we always try and do is look at the classes that are sparsely attended and figure out something to try and make them work better. And sometimes offering a different program is exactly what could, maybe add some excitement or just appeal to a different audience in those times. MBV, you were going to say something?
Yeah. If you are considering adding a new class to your schedule, whether or not it's a current program that you already offer in a different time, or a new program that you don't offer and you're going to introduce it, I think one of the things that's important to make sure you do is you're upfront with your membership that this is a trial period, that you're going to set a time frame around how long you're going to trial this class out in this time slot or this new program out, so you can gather information. And let's say you launch it with the best intentions. You go out there, you talk to your coaches about the why, you give your members the updates about when and where this is going to go down. You tell them about why, and you tell them that you're fired up about it. And you got all the tools and systems and processes in place to get this thing going. But it just turns out to be a lemon. It's a dud. Nobody shows up for whatever reason. Maybe the time is off. Maybe the program didn't hit right, whatever. But you do have 3 or 4 people who have been coming every day to this thing. Well, at the end, what you can do is you say, hey, listen, you can talk to those 4 people. And it's going to soften the blow a little bit to say, we piloted this thing out. We tried to make this work, and we gave it our best effort. We know that you guys love this program. Maybe we'll get after it again in the future. But for now, it's just not where we're at. And maybe you can even give them like the historic programming that you launched during those weeks or months, and that they can continue to do it, or something to soften the blow a little bit more. But at least now you have the data, and the people who have been coming to the program are aware that there were some stakes involved in this, that this wasn't automatically going to be going on forever.
Hey, MDV, on that same note, and Gabe, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but we are doing bringing your friends on Sundays for how many weeks are we doing that for?
So we're doing it for the entire month of December. So we're going to just open up these very, sparsely attended weekend classes during December, which isn't, the most popular month for people coming to the gym. And we're now converting those to essentially, open community classes, because again, we want to maximize the floor space at that time. And, it seemed like a good idea to try and get people in the door to at least see what we're about, so we can, have a good push to actually convert them to paying members come January. Cool. Well, we do have a lot of questions, which I love. So I think we pretty much covered everything we wanted to cover. And there's a bunch more things that we can in these questions, but I'm going to start getting to it here. So I'm going to start with the questions that were in the Q&A box. So Beto says, I heard in the latest podcast that NC Flex should be used as an open gym type program. And he's asking, how do we offer it? And is it part of the same charge or something separate? I can answer this one super quick. Beto, we do offer it to our recurring members. So as long as our members are in a monthly subscription through the Wodify app, they have access to compete and NC Flex, and they can get to those programs at open gyms. What we don't do currently is for any athlete that is only on session packs. So if they're just buying like a 1 class, a 5 class pack, they get access to NC Metcon and NCX, because those are the classes that they might be taking class to, so they can kind of see what's coming, but they do not get access to the additional programs that are meant for open gym. If they wanted to access that, they would have to do so through our app. So that's kind of how we handle it. Next question's from Greg. Greg says, how do you allocate resources and life energy between the 2 offerings? So building up marketing, equipment, space. I'll pitch this one to you, Jay. How do we split kind of the energy, resources, marketing that goes into NCX versus NC Metcon?
I mean, that's a good question. I think the energy is both. I mean, I think if you listen to the way MDV speaks about our programs and the way that I speak about them, there is no better or worse. I think that's really important. What we learned over the years is that we used to put a 60-minute class on a pedestal over a 30-minute class, and it caused some friction in our gyms, because somebody like, oh yeah, I'm an NC Metcon member. It's like, oh, I'm an NCX member. And it started creating this weird friction. I think what's important from an energy perspective, marketing perspective, equipment's going to be the same. So equipment, space, all of that. I think the key is that you create a framework for what you believe in as a training organization. At NCFIT, we offer NC Metcon and NCX in our gyms. One of these is more of a GPP program. It's going to offer more complexity and more variety. I think if someone comes in 5-6 days a week, it's a phenomenal program because it gives you a lot of diversity and change in what you're doing. But NCX is more fundamental strength conditioning. And if you're coming in 3-4 days a week, or if you desire to do more of that kind of everyday consistent pull, push, squat, etc., and a 12 to 15 minute AMRAP, that's a great program for you. But the way I just described that for the last 30 seconds, it comes with the same level of energy and marketing, and it's always together because they're not separate programs. They're built as one NCFIT training philosophy.
Yeah. And we never wanted, go ahead, MD.
I was going to say, the one thing I would add to that is that the responsibility of the owner, the head coach here in this situation, is to convey those types of things to your coaches, to your front desk staff, in a way that they understand now to convey it to potential members or current members. You do have the responsibility to make sure that your people are going out there and talking about these programs with equal amounts of passion, that they understand the talking points, the why behind the programs. That's really, really critical. The other thing is having conversations with your coaches about just not being so fundamental or so narrow-minded about, hey, if we're going to offer, let's say you only offer one program, that's fine. You can talk, this is the best. This is what we offer right now. But then at one point, if you're going to offer something else, and if you want to get behind it, you want to put all your time and energy and resources in there, you've got to be ready to break down those barriers for your coaches, where it's just like, hey, we now have multiple programs that we're going to be talking about. And we have to know that fitness isn't so fundamental. It's only one direction here. This is the only way to get fit. You can do either one of these programs and have a great fitness experience.
Yeah, it's super important to keep it on that same level and communicate to the coaches. Next question is from Adrian, and I'm gonna pitch this one to you, MDB. What do you think about one-on-one programming? So programming specifically for an individual athlete.
It depends on the athlete's goals. You know, in the type of business that we run, we're a group class environment first. But if you wanted to have a successful one-on-one type of business, if you wanted to have an opportunity for your coaches to have one-on-one training, I think that the group class environment is like the necessary step prior to that. You have to run badass group classes in order to get yourself buy-in into the one-on-one environment, the way that we are set up. I think that that's fine for people that want to do additional work, that need specific guidance on specific goals. Hey, I want to PR my back squat. I want to go and run a marathon. I want to compete at the highest level. You might need some additional instruction or some additional guidance. There's nothing wrong with that. I think also managing the expectations of those athletes based on what you offer in your class environment and where they might top out at and what they can accomplish is being honest and upfront with them, and then giving them the opportunity, if they want to, either purchase or get guidance from a coach or from you for one-on-one stuff. It can be useful depending on the athlete's goals.
I like that point about, you know, running really good group classes being kind of a prerequisite to being able to do that well. So Cooper had a question. I was just reading through it a little bit. So he says that they offer a kids class, great revenue generator for them. You know, however, other ones like, you know, having an Ollie class or home wads seems to be a little bit more work without members wanting to pay more. So I think the question just comes down to how to prioritize, you know, which classes to add, you know, minimal overhead versus increased value, or just a small group wanting something like Ollie. So I think the question which really comes down to, Jay, and I'll pitch this to you, you know, how do you prioritize what you do decide to offer and what maybe you already offer and you decide to take away?
This is a tough question. We recently took over a gym, and we did that about a month or two ago. And they had an Ollie program that met twice a week, and we decided to dissolve that. And that was not fun. It's never fun. It's not fun because you're going to have 3-5 people in there who are really passionate about it. And you have a coach who's obviously making a wage from that. And those are considerations to make. But ultimately, when we took over this business, and I've gotten, I think, more focused on this in the last couple of years, when you've been in business for a long time, you start realizing that all we're doing is delaying the inevitable if we're continuing a program that we know is not going to be successful and grow and doesn't align with where we want to go as a business. And so my thing with in Cooper's case would be, we removed this class and it sucked, and the communication had to be done the right way. But it's better off in the long run, because now during that peak time where this class was offered, we could service more members, which is impacting more lives and ultimately going to grow our business more. So I think, Cooper, you got to sit back and say, hey, what programs do I see us having a year, 2 years from now that add value for people and that are growth minded for our business and where we want to go as a company? And if they're not, the sooner you rip the Band-Aid off, probably the better. Just make sure you do it in a way that's professional and well communicated.
Awesome. Next question is from Britt. And Britt asks, what are the class times that are most attended at NCFIT locations? And then how does NCFIT determine when to cut a class time, add additional class time? So I think the second part of that question we went through with, looking at the end of every month, kind of where our attendance is at and using that to determine. But, Jay, since you're at the gyms, I know we don't have the numbers in front of us, but, based on what you've seen, what are the most popular times at NCFIT right now?
I mean, it's the typical ones, right? It's like the 5, 6 a.m. It's before work. It's the noon class. And then actually for us, in particular in Campbell, like we're starting to see 3:30 and 4:30 grow, which I was surprised about because traditionally it's a little bit later, like after work. But I think because a lot of people are working from home and have different schedules now, we're actually seeing the 3:30 be pretty popular. So before work, 5, 6 a.m., also before people have to go take their kids to school, midday, 12, and then 3:30 or that after work class, like 5:30, 6:30. I think that if you're a gym, and you don't offer those, including on the weekends. I think having like some morning type classes, if you're not offering those, I think you should at least explore it. I think something to note when you're treating your business as a business and not as a hobby, if you're a third party unbiased and you weren't coaching the classes. So there's oftentimes a coach doesn't want to add a class because they don't want to add a 5 a.m. because they don't want to get up at 4. And I get that. I do. But if you take yourself out of the business and you look at it just from a third party, you say, wow, all these other gyms have successful 5 a.m.s. I saw that some gentleman or a person mentioned their 5 a.m. is consistently filled. Sometimes you have to take a step back as an owner and realize that just because you don't want to coach it doesn't mean it's not a good class to add. You just might need to find an opportunity if it's good for the business.
Awesome. Next question from David. I'll tackle this one really quick. So David runs NCX, but has a dedicated kind of personal training open gym space as well. So he's asking again, flex, compete. Do we offer that as an additional charge, as an upcharge, or is it included? Like we said, at this moment, it's an included value add for our monthly memberships, but it would be an upcharge through our app for anyone that's just doing session packs. That's how we do it now. Might change in the future, but again, right now it's just a value add for our monthly members. Next question is from Jeff. So he's asking specifically on the 2-room model, how do you go about scheduling both NC Metcon and NCX? Peak hours may have both classes and both different types of customers, but if you can't do a 2-room model, how would you run a class that is both? And I think, Jay, you answered this a little bit, but maybe you want to expand on that a little bit.
I would just make sure I highlight one part in particular. I would not recommend running the same class for, like, let's just say it's a 12 o'clock class and half the group is doing an NCX workout and half the group is doing an NC Metcon. I wouldn't recommend that. I think everyone should be doing the same thing on that given day. So if that was the question was alluding to, I don't recommend providing an option for people. I think the class is either one way or another way. Now, the 2-room model I think is completely different, right? Because you could offer an NCX and NC Metcon at the exact same time and people can choose what they want to do, or you could stagger it by 30 minutes. But if you only have 1-room model, I would then have one class for the future and then potentially survey your members and see if they're interested in pivoting that time to something else.
Good answer there. Next question is from Dan. I think, Jason, you mentioned this and mentioning when, someone isn't aligned with the direction the business is going, saying phasing them out as opposed to firing someone. What does that look like? Was that just, words used, or is that something that, we've done in the past in terms of it being a process? Or MBB, if you want to answer.
Yeah, I think that was actually how I discussed it. Okay. So it's never easy to let go of somebody, but I think that in terms of looking at your business, you have to be really, really, I don't want to say selfish, but you have to be pretty strong in your convictions about this one. Oftentimes you can let these conversations trail on and on and on and on, because you might have somebody in your business who, although they're grinding against the direction that you want to go, they have a lot of people who hold on to them, and maybe they're a standout coach on the floor, or maybe they have a really strong following of like 10 vocal people that are always in this person's corner. Here's the deal. If you have that gut feeling that this person is not going the same direction that you are, you must, in my opinion, sit them down and talk to them about, hey, listen, we have to be on the same page here. We can't be doing things like talking against what we're doing on the floor, or going out there and not putting your all into this type of program that you're coaching now, or talking down about a particular workout because you don't like it. Whatever the reasons are, give that person the opportunity, give them the meeting, talk it through, make sure everything is crystal clear, make sure the expectations are set, and then let them know that, hey, listen, over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be making sure that I monitor this, and I don't want to hear about any of these things that have come up in the past continue to come up. If we're on the same page and we're marching in the same direction, that's great. If you don't notice that, I think at that point you have to sit that person down again and let them know that this is the absolute either last time, or it might already be the last time, and we're going to now move on a different direction. The thing that I would advise against, if you haven't set the expectation properly, or you haven't sat them down and communicated them to why it's important that they can't be doing these things, even though it's honestly brutally obvious that you can't be talking against the nature of the business or whatever, you have to do that. You have to at least give them the opportunity. You have to explain the expectations. Those have to be clear. And then once those are laid out, if they're not marching the beat of that drum, then that's the time that you can either phase them out over the course of a week, or you can let them know that this is their last class. Ultimately, I like making sure that as soon as we know the decision is made, it's probably best to already have your plan on which direction you're going to go. That's not this current person.
Never an easy conversation, but oftentimes a necessary one. Steve.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to put in the chat box, a location of ours, it's a location. You could just hit the back button if you go to that and then look at our other schedules, but it'll give a good idea of how we run the schedule at Campbell. And then, if you look at it, it's NC Metcon, X, Metcon, and then X. And as an example, right? I just wanted to put that in there for Steve. I thought that would be relevant to him. It's not the only way to do it. It's just how we've done it. And we're also rebuilding coming out of COVID, which in the Bay Area, COVID really, really impacted our gyms. And so we're at a more consolidated scheduling than we used to be. We used to be significantly more, but we're building it back up.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that example is super useful. So thanks for putting that in there, Jay. Next question from Mitchell. So he's actually thinking of implementing sport performance for teens that are, aspiring to be competitive high school or college athletes. And he's actually thinking about adding a separate location that's completely separate to the first location. The question is, do you think it's beneficial to keep those locations and approaches completely separate? Or is there value of having this new approach in class in the existing location as kind of a value add? What do you guys think?
I think that question has pretty deep financial implications. There's a lot of things to consider in that question. I know in my previous experience when I was working at CrossFit New England pretty early on in my coaching career, we had a very successful teen sport performance program that was run at specific times, that it was set up with a specific owner that had multiple people who could coach that class, that added great value to the current members because the kids were dropped off there. They knew where the location was. The adults were often, almost always members as well. So they're all coming to the singular location. I think that those are things to consider. I think if you're running your kids one way and then you got to go this way to come and get your fitness, it might be a little bit confusing, or it might turn into a little bit of a headache. But I think that question probably has more deep financial implications than anything else.
I would just at a high level, I'll just at a high level, when we're looking at our business, we want to ask the question, total available market. And when we're looking at the available market, we want to try and attract the largest demographic we can with the core message that we're going after. And if you choose to reduce that demographic, whether you decide to have a female only class, a kids class, whatever, you're reducing down that available market. And in some cases, that's highly effective, right? You're zoomed in. I mean, some would say that at our gym, we're already zoomed in because we're looking for people who want group classes and functional training and want to put in the effort. That's already zoomed in. So if we zoom in even more, that could be good or bad. And so I would recommend probably before you go out there and take on additional overhead, sign leases, et cetera, test out that at your location where the barrier to entry isn't as big because you don't need to expend so much.
Good point there. Phil has a really good question. So have we, and I'm not sure if we've ever experienced this at NCFIT, Jason, you'll know better than I, have we ever had like a hot hour in that the 5:30 a.m. is packed? You can add a class before, you can add a class after, doesn't matter. People are coming to this one class. Is there any way, aside from getting a bigger space, to try and accommodate a specific class that just for whatever reason seems to be packed all the time?
So some gyms have done this. I haven't seen it done successfully, but I want to acknowledge it. Some gyms have done a limited membership where you could have access to classes outside of peak times for reduced rate. So I think that's important to note. We do not currently offer that, but that is something to acknowledge that, hey, your rate could be $226 if you want all access, or $126 if you only want these times. So that could be a thing they could think about, right? Otherwise, it's maybe going, so if the person, I believe they were saying 5 or 5:30, what we have seen successful is, let's just say you have a 5:30 that's successful, or a 5, changing it to 4:30, 5:30, 6:30 instead of 5, 6, 7. So we move it half hour up or down, which is oftentimes a little bit easier for someone to pivot than a whole hour time slot. So the 2 recommendations would be evaluating that 30-minute jump back and down, or if it's really, really impacted, think about the whole membership thing, which we haven't done and I can't speak to.
The other thing here that I have seen be successful in the past at some of the other gyms that I've been at is you can create a wait list for that class, and then let the people know who are signing up, hey, you can join the wait list for this class, but you will not have access to it right now. You have access to all the other classes. As the wait list opens up, you potentially get into that class, but it at least offers them an opportunity to join, knowing that they're somewhere on the wait list and that they can go to the other classes.
So you're talking about a permanent wait list, not just for that specific class.
No, wait list for that specific class. 5:30 a.m. is closed right now. You have access to the 6:30, 7:30, the noon, and so on. You can put your name on the wait list for the 5:30 a.m. As soon as it opens up, you'll be able to attend.
Got it.
So Luis has a good question that I think, we've all seen this kind of scenario unfold in some way or another. So he says that it's always been a class gym, but recently a national level athlete, CrossFit Open top 10, joined the gym and asked, to train there. Some of the more advanced athletes, want to do a lot more volume because they see that there's this stud athlete in the gym now doing a lot more, even though, Luis says they don't really have that athlete's capacity. But now he is thinking of having an advanced class to try and, please that group. It's a small group, but it is starting to kind of have an impact on the community. So what would you do? And if you do end up rolling an advanced class, would you make it more expensive?
I would not roll out an advanced class predicated on one person who came into your gym. I would ask the question, have you been thinking about doing this for years and years and years? Or are you making this decision because you had someone come into the gym, and if this wasn't even on your mind 6 months ago, is it a good reason to start a brand new class? Does it align with your business goals? And if it does, then maybe you could think about it. But for us at NCFIT, more times than not, the advanced athletes, we've had many, many, many advanced athletes, and I love them and they're doing great. But we cannot allow a vocal minority to cause us to start classes that may not be well attended and take on additional expense and maybe not have full ownership in. If you as the owner are fired up about it and want to actually invest the time, effort, energy into it, I think that's different. But if you're just doing it to appease a small group, I would put out a member survey potentially, or sit back and say, hey, am I listening to some of my members or the sum of, and go from there.
The other thing is that you got to be careful with the naming of these types of classes. If you put out a class that's the advanced class, what does that say to anybody who thinks that they are advanced that isn't in that class? Or what does it say about the people who are just doing your regular programming? Is that not good enough anymore? You also have to be a little bit careful in regard to fitness. We don't have a belt system like exists in martial arts. So it's not like you can say only purple belts or above can come to this class, where it's very clear. If you've earned your purple belt, you can go to that class. Got it. Not there yet. Gonna get there someday. In fitness, it's a little bit different. And I think that it's a slippery slope if you say, oh, you have to be doing X number of workouts per day or X number of times to get into this class. You know, if you're going to offer that type of class, like Jason said, I think you have to go through those considerations first. But then I think you have to be careful about the naming. And then you also have to, in my opinion, at least open it up to people and have somebody there who can guide people who might not yet be at that level, who want to adjust some of the things down, who want to experience it, who maybe want to like check it out here or there, and not be so closed off where it's like, it can only be these people. Then you start to create factions or like these little kind of cliques, and that's not good for the community. I haven't seen that be successful ever, where you have a clique that is, we are doing this and we're better than you. And I hate that whole message. I hate everything about that.
Yeah, that could be tough. We are on the hour mark, so I do just want to respect everyone's time. Thank everyone for coming. Thank you for the questions. If there's anything that you feel like we didn't get to, you can email me directly, gabe@nc.fit. I'm going to put that in the chat box. If I can't answer the question, I'll make sure I get answers from one of these two guys. And if anyone listening is not a part of the collective yet, Jason mentioned this a second ago.
Why would you not be? I don't understand. I literally don't understand.
Bunch of tools, resources, programming, and session plans is just the tip of the iceberg. And we're going to continue to add value through these webinars, through the written content, through a bunch of things in 2022. So please, guys, check us out. Email me, gabe@nc.fit. I'm actually going to put this in the chat box now in case there's any confusion on the spelling. Hope to hear from you guys. And Jay, MBB, thank you so much. Jay, you want to close this out?
I would just say one final thing. At NCFIT, we're really prideful about sharing real life experiences, right? What we've gone through to hopefully raise the bar of gym owners. We really care. And the collective is by far the best tool set that we could possibly provide, because we're testing it, curating it, everything in our gyms for you. It's not hypothetical. When we learn from our athletes, we then bring that to the collective. The business tools we use, we bring that to the collective. So if you haven't checked it out, I would highly, highly encourage you to do so. And most importantly, I appreciate everybody being on this or listening to it later, because it shows you're taking a step to try and grow your business. And for all of us, we want to rise the tide. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.